Love doesn't begin the moment someone shows interest in you. It doesn't start when you receive attention, affection, or validation from another person. Love begins much earlier than that. At the moment you decide that your worth is not dependent on being chosen. When you choose yourself first, you create the conditions for real love to exist, rather than settling for approval disguised as affection. Many people enter relationships hoping to be picked, hoping to finally feel enough through someone else's desire. They measure their value by how much effort another person gives, how quickly messages are returned, or how intensely someone seems to want them. In doing so, they hand over the responsibility for their self-worth to someone who may not even understand it themselves. This creates a fragile foundation because when validation disappears, so does the sense of security. Choosing yourself means understanding that attention is not love, consistency matters more than chemistry, and someone's interest does not automatically equal alignment. It means recognizing that you are not auditioning for a role in someone else's life. You are deciding who deserves a place in yours. This shift changes everything. Instead of performing, proving, or pleasing, you begin observing. You start asking whether someone's actions match their words, whether their presence adds peace or anxiety, and whether the relationship allows you to be more of who you are rather than less. When you choose yourself, you stop negotiating your boundaries in exchange for connection. You no longer accept mixed signals because you hope they will turn into clarity. You no longer stay quiet about your needs because you fear being too much. You understand that the right person will not require you to abandon yourself in order to be loved. Self-choice creates the courage to say no to what feels wrong, even when walking away is uncomfortable. This mindset also removes desperation from love. You are no longer chasing potential or clinging to possibilities. You are grounded in the knowledge that being alone is not a failure, and that peace is preferable to confusion. From this place, love becomes something you invite, not something you beg for. You engage from abundance rather than fear, knowing that your life is already whole and a relationship should enhance it, not complete it. Choosing yourself does not mean closing your heart or becoming guarded. It means opening your heart with discernment. It means allowing attraction to exist alongside standards and emotion to coexist with self-respect. When you value yourself first, you naturally attract people who are capable of valuing you too. And even when someone walks away, your sense of self remains intact. Because it was never dependent on their approval in the first place, this is where love becomes healthy. Not because it is perfect, but because it is built on a solid foundation, one where your worth is non-negotiable, your boundaries are. Confidence is often misunderstood. Many people mistake it for loudness, dominance, or a need to prove superiority. But true confidence looks nothing like that. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't demand attention or seek to overpower others. It is rooted in self-worth, not comparison. When confidence comes from a secure sense of value, it doesn't need to announce itself because it already knows who it is. Arrogance is fueled by insecurity. It relies on external validation and constant reinforcement to survive. A person who is arrogant needs to be right, needs to win, needs to feel above others in order to feel okay. Confidence, on the other hand, doesn't compete. It doesn't diminish others to elevate itself. It allows room for different opinions, growth, and vulnerability because it is not threatened by imperfection. In relationships, this distinction matters deeply. Someone who lacks confidence may overgive, over-explain, or over-accommodate in an attempt to secure love. They may say yes when they mean no, stay silent when something hurts, or tolerate behavior that doesn't align with their values. Arrogance may look like control or emotional distance, but insecurity can just as easily show up as people pleasing. Both come from a place of not fully trusting one's own worth. Confidence allows you to hold your standards without apology. It gives you permission to express your needs clearly and calmly without fear that doing so will cost you love. You don't need to inflate yourself or put someone else down to feel strong. You simply stand in what feels right for you and trust that the right connection will meet you there. When you are confident, you don't rush to defend yourself every time there is disagreement. You listen, reflect, and respond rather than react. You understand that being challenged does not mean being diminished. Confidence makes room for growth because it is not attached to being perfect. It is attached to being authentic. This kind of self-worth also protects you from settling. You don't accept half effort or inconsistent behavior just to avoid being alone. At the same time, you don't demand perfection or control outcomes to feel secure. You are open, but not desperate. Present, but not dependent. Your value doesn't rise or fall based on how someone else behaves. When confidence is rooted in self-worth, relationships become more balanced. You are able to give freely without keeping score, and you are able to receive without feeling guilty or unworthy. You don't feel the need to perform or pretend because you believe that who you are is already enough. That belief shapes every interaction, creating space for connection that is honest, respectful, and emotionally safe. This is the confidence that sustains love, not loud declarations or power plays, but a steady inner certainty that you don't have to be more or less than you are to be worthy of care. When confidence enters your life, the questions you ask about love begin to change. Instead of constantly wondering whether you are desirable enough, interesting enough, or lovable enough, your focus shifts inward and forward. You stop measuring your value through someone else's reactions and start evaluating whether a relationship actually supports the life and emotional well-being you want. This shift may seem subtle, but it fundamentally transforms how you experience connection. Asking, "Am I enough?" keeps you in a position of waiting and probing. It places the other person in control as if they are the judge and you are the one on trial. Every delay, every mixed signal, every moment of distance becomes evidence that you must try harder or change something about yourself. Over time, this mindset erodes self-respect and creates anxiety because your sense of security depends on outcomes you cannot control. Confidence interrupts this pattern. When you trust your own worth, you no longer see relationships as tests you must pass. You recognize that compatibility is mutual, not one-sided. Instead of bending yourself to fit someone else's expectations, you begin paying attention to how you feel around them. Do you feel calm or constantly on edge? Do you feel encouraged to speak honestly? Or do you censor yourself to avoid conflict? These questions matter more than whether someone seems impressed by you. Shifting to, "Is this right for me?" puts you back in the driver's seat of your emotional life. You begin assessing alignment rather than approval. You notice whether someone's actions are consistent, whether their values match yours, and whether the relationship allows space for growth. You stop romanticizing potential and start responding to reality. This doesn't make you cold or detached. It makes you grounded. With confidence, you become less afraid of disappointing others and more concerned with disappointing yourself. You understand that staying in situations that drain you or confuse you is a greater loss than walking away from someone who cannot meet you. You realize that attraction alone is not enough to sustain a healthy relationship. Safety, respect, and emotional availability become non-negotiable. This change in perspective also reduces fear around rejection. When a connection ends or doesn't progress, you no longer automatically assume it's because you weren't enough. You can acknowledge disappointment without internalizing it as a verdict on your worth. You understand that not every mismatch is a failure. Often, it's simply information guiding you towards something more aligned. Asking whether a relationship is right for you encourages patience. You stop rushing intimacy and allow trust to build naturally. You observe patterns over time instead of clinging to moments. Confidence gives you the ability to wait, not because you are passive, but because you are intentional. You know that the right relationship will not require you to abandon your standards or your sense of self. This internal shift reshapes love from something you chase into something you choose, allowing relationships to develop from clarity rather than insecurity. Healthy love is not built on uncertainty, anxiety, or emotional highs and lows. Yet many people mistake inconsistency for excitement, believing that unpredictability creates passion. In reality, constant questioning, waiting, and emotional turbulence do not deepen connection, they erode trust. Confidence brings the clarity needed to recognize that stability is not boring and consistency is not a lack of chemistry, it is a sign of emotional maturity. When someone is confident, they pay close attention to patterns rather than promises. They understand that words can be convincing, but behavior is revealing. Mixed signals are no longer seen as a challenge to decode or a mystery to solve. They are recognized for what they are: misalignment. Confidence removes the temptation to chase clarity from someone who consistently avoids providing it. Instead, it encourages choosing situations where intentions are clear and effort is mutual. Clarity in a relationship means knowing where you stand without having to ask repeatedly. It means communication is open rather than evasive, and expectations are understood rather than assumed. Confident individuals are willing to have honest conversations, even when those conversations feel uncomfortable. They do not avoid truth to preserve illusion. They recognize that temporary discomfort is far less damaging than long-term confusion. Consistency creates emotional safety. When actions align with words over time, trust naturally grows. You don't have to guess someone's feelings or interpret silence as meaning. You don't live in anticipation of sudden withdrawal or unpredictable affection. Confidence allows you to value this steadiness instead of mistaking chaos for depth. You realize that a calm nervous system is not a lack of spark, it is a sign that your emotional needs are being respected. Without confidence, people often rationalize inconsistency. They excuse cancelled plans, delayed communication, or emotional distance by focusing on potential or past moments of intensity. They convince themselves that patience will eventually be rewarded, even when patterns suggest otherwise. Confidence disrupts this cycle by grounding decisions in reality rather than hope. It brings the strength to acknowledge when effort is uneven and to step away instead of holding on. Choosing clarity and consistency does not mean expecting perfection. It means expecting reliability. Confident people understand that everyone has flaws and bad days, but inconsistency becomes a problem when it is chronic and unaddressed. They look for willingness, accountability, and follow through rather than flawless behavior. They value partners who show up, communicate openly, and demonstrate care through consistent action. This mindset transforms how love feels. Instead of anxiety, there is trust. Instead of confusion, there is understanding. Instead of emotional exhaustion, there is stability. Confidence teaches that love should not feel like a constant test of endurance. When clarity and consistency are present, love becomes a space where both people can relax, grow, and connect without fear of sudden loss or emotional uncertainty. Strong relationships are not built by people who never make mistakes or always know the right thing to say. They are built by individuals who are secure enough to be honest, even when honesty feels uncomfortable, and brave enough to face difficult moments without avoiding them. Confidence gives people the emotional stability to show up truthfully rather than hiding behind fear or performance. Honesty in a relationship requires vulnerability. It means expressing feelings instead of suppressing them and addressing issues before they turn into resentment. Without confidence, people often avoid these conversations because they fear conflict will lead to rejection or abandonment. They stay silent, hoping problems will resolve themselves, but silence rarely creates closeness. Confidence provides the assurance that your needs and feelings are valid, and that expressing them respectfully is not a threat to love, but a pathway to deeper understanding. Security also allows people to set and maintain boundaries. Boundaries are not walls meant to keep others out. They are guidelines that protect emotional well-being. In confident relationships, boundaries are communicated clearly and respected consistently. When someone crosses a line, it is addressed calmly rather than ignored or escalated. This creates a sense of trust because both people know where they stand and what is expected. Walking away is another act that requires confidence. Many people stay in relationships long after they stop feeling respected, valued, or emotionally safe. They remain because they fear being alone more than they fear being unhappy. Confidence shifts this perspective. It allows individuals to recognize when a relationship no longer aligns with their values and to leave without viewing that decision as failure. Walking away becomes an act of self-respect rather than defeat. This courage does not come from coldness or detachment. It comes from clarity. Confident people understand that staying in unhealthy dynamics teaches others how to treat them. They also understand that love cannot thrive where effort is one-sided or accountability is absent. Choosing to leave in such situations is not about punishment or control. It is about honoring one's own emotional health. Security in a relationship also creates space for repair. When both people feel confident in themselves, they are more willing to take responsibility for mistakes. Apologies become sincere rather than defensive, and growth becomes possible. There is less blame and more collaboration. Instead of focusing on who is right, the focus shifts to what is needed to move forward in a healthier way. Ultimately, relationships built on security, honesty, and courage feel steady rather than fragile. They are not driven by fear of loss or constant reassurance seeking. They are supported by mutual respect and a shared commitment to emotional well-being. Confidence makes it possible to stay and work through challenges when growth is present and to walk away when it is not, without losing one's sense of self in the process. When confidence is present, love no longer feels like something you have to earn through constant effort or emotional endurance. It becomes mutual, balanced, and calm. This calm is often misunderstood as a lack of passion, but in reality, it is the result of emotional safety. Confidence allows love to exist without the tension of uncertainty because both people are secure in who they are and in how they show up for each other. Mutual love is not about equal gestures at every moment, but about shared intention. Confident individuals don't keep score or measure affection to protect themselves. They give because they want to, not because they are afraid of losing someone. At the same time, they are comfortable receiving love without questioning whether they deserve it. This balance creates a natural rhythm where care flows in both directions without pressure or manipulation. When confidence is lacking, love often feels like a struggle. There is overthinking, second guessing, and constant monitoring of the other person's behavior. Small changes in tone or communication can create anxiety, leading to assumptions and emotional exhaustion. Confidence quiets this noise. It allows you to trust what is happening in the present rather than catastrophizing what might happen in the future. You feel grounded instead of reactive. Calm love doesn't mean the absence of challenges or disagreements. It means those challenges are approached with respect rather than fear. Confident people don't view conflict as a threat to the relationship. They see it as an opportunity to understand each other better. They can express frustration without attacking and listen without becoming defensive. This emotional regulation creates a sense of safety that allows love to deepen rather than fracture. Confidence also removes the need to perform in relationships. You don't feel pressure to be constantly interesting, agreeable, or accommodating to maintain connection. You trust that being yourself is enough. This authenticity creates intimacy because real closeness can only exist when both people feel free to show up fully. Love becomes a place of rest rather than a stage. As confidence grows, love begins to feel familiar in the best way, not predictable or dull, but steady and reassuring. You don't fear abandonment with every disagreement or moment of distance. You understand that connection doesn't disappear because of temporary discomfort. This sense of security allows you to relax into the relationship instead of holding your breath. When love feels like home, it is because confidence has laid the groundwork. There is warmth without anxiety, closeness without dependency, and connection without loss of self. You are able to grow together while remaining whole on your own. In this space, love is no longer something you fight for. It is something you build, nurture, and live within every day.